Good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Danny and this is Bryce and Jihan, and today we will be looking at chapters 8 and 10 of the book. Chapter 8 focuses on culture, more specifically digital culture. You may not think that a digital culture can exist, but after this presentation you might think differently. Or you might think the exact same, which means that we have failed. We will also be looking at how information in this day and age is received and processed and the different strands associated with it. We will focus a lot on digital youth culture, as it is argued that digital culture is first explored by young people. From this, we look at trends in new media use and how these trends will develop and mature. Finally, we look at the final chapter of the book, which is a bit of a wrap-up. The main focus today will be digital culture, but we will also look back at previous work and topics and hopefully have a discussion after. Bryce will now give an overview of what exactly is digital culture. Bryce.
Thanks, Danny. Before we begin to look at digital culture, we should probably have an idea as to what precisely is culture. Culture are coherent values, expectations, expressions, and artifacts shared by a group of people. This is just a broad definition and not set in stone. Many of us have studied culture classes at HHS, but I don't think any of us have discussed it in a digital context. Digital culture is a mix of convergence, hypermedia, and user-generated content. Many of you probably have many social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and so on, which will allow you to express yourself and to, in a way, promote your own individual culture. Many young people, younger than the people in this room, use social media and other media platforms to really explore themselves and express themselves. Think of Vine comedians, Instagram kings and queens, and so on. Today we will dive into all this and explore, step by step, how it all works and is processed. Jihan will now take over and look at the characteristics of digital culture, which is a bit more complex than you might think. Jihan?
Thanks, Bryce. So now that you have a general idea about what digital culture is, we will now look at the characteristics of it, which is a lot more than a retweet or a like. First, pre-programming. Historically, the artist would create something completely from scratch. But over time, and because of technological advances, the work of art has been taken away from the artist, step by step, and put into the hands of consumers. Now, anyone can create their own is perhaps a strong word, their works, but by using bits and pieces of existing work. For example, is a remix of a popular song really a unique piece of work? Is this PowerPoint really our own creation? We have used pre-programmed material to create something for ourselves. Fragmentation. Fragmentation is the division of analog sources into bits and bytes. This enables an unrestricted division of the content of these sources. Take the structure of the internet. The content of a website is spread out over several pages and can be all accessed with one simple click. Also look at music. Any song can now be broken down, manipulated, and reworked. This is modularization. Quickly causes the unity of a creative work to be lost. Now we're looking at user generation. We see that, because of digitization, users of digital technology can contribute themselves to higher forms of culture, such as writing publications, drawings, and pictures. This is very different to when the internet first appeared, when it acted only as an electronic version of print and audiovisual media. Web 2.0 has changed this massively, as I'm sure you can agree. Many, such as Andrew Keen, a British-American entrepreneur and author, calls Web 2.0 the god of the amateur. Low quality and endless free copying. Now acceleration influences the digital culture by increasing the production, dispersion, and consumption of information. Everything we do now, sending a WhatsApp text, sharing a video, or writing a blog piece, is done at a record pace, and it is consumed and shared at a similar pace. This makes us think less about the message being sent or received, causing an abrupt style of replying and thinking, with an increase in use of abbreviations. Think FYI, OMG, WTF, and an increase in importance of images, for example emojis. This leads into visualization. Screens have become far more important. Smartphones, for example. These days, people are constantly fighting for attention, using symbols and imagery to gain this attention. This has potentially negative consequences, with more and more people living in an artificial reality. I hope this gives you a decent idea as to what digital culture is and what the effects and possible effects are. Danny will now discuss information processing and how this plays a part in digital culture.
Thanks, Jihan. Now, if we look at this image, we see a pyramid. This image is slightly different from the one in the book, just so you know. At the base of the pyramid, we have measurements, or bits and bytes, letters or images, or other tokens. From this, humans then translate these bits and bytes into data, but they do not bear any particular meaning. Data becomes information, or interpreted data. At this stage, we see the pyramid is shrinking, as humans decide what to filter out. The information that is kept becomes knowledge, when the facts kept start to have an effect. Finally, at the top of the pyramid, we have wisdom, when the final strands of this pyramid become more meaningful and have a deeper experience. Digital culture has increased the amounts of bits and bytes, but made it harder to process and get a deeper understanding. We're now going to look at digital youth culture, the so-called Facebook generation. What is most interesting about the digital youth culture is that it is creating a crisis of boundaries, as it moves away from traditional institutions such as family, school, and mass media, and moves into own world experiences. Self-presentation becomes a priority in digital youth culture, as well as being in control on forging contacts and relationships. The digital generation, more than ever, now has unique opportunities to create their own content, with creation and promotion entirely free in most cases. Being a youth today is a lot more than it used to be. The real world and digital world are almost fully integrated, with presenting yourself in a good way online just as important as presenting yourself in a good way offline. Now that we have looked at digital youth culture, we're going to look at trends in new media usage. Bryce?
Convergence, in relation to what we are discussing today, is the integration of telephone, radio, television and the computer into a single medium, broadband internet. Will everything we do be available on a single platform such as the World Wide Web? Maybe, maybe not. Many social practices remain completely offline, but with the increase in use of smartphones and other new technology, who knows? Hypermediation are hyperlinks that bring us millions of sources and links. For example, instead of going to the library and picking a handful of books, we will go to an electronic library and roam a huge number of sources. We've already discussed user-generated content, with Web 2.0 providing us with all the tools to create and share new media. However, many users of the web do not do this. Instead, they enjoy other content. It may take some time for extensive user-generated content to develop. Finally, concentration. Many of you may think that you use many websites and sources, but when you really think about it, you may only use less than 100 sites. Facebook, YouTube, Google, news sites, and so on. This is not to do with laziness, but to do with the concentration of results from search engines and large corporations spending lots of money ensuring that their sites are seen the most. Moving on to the end of the presentation. Gia?
Thank you. We are now going to look at some of the general conclusions of the book. Obviously, there was a lot covered in the book, so we narrowed it down to what we thought you might find the most interesting. I think we can all agree that the book and this course looks at the process of becoming a network society. We see that in some states, such as the United States or the Netherlands, people are closely connected to the global network infrastructure, transitioning from a mass society to a network society. In India, cities such as Bangalore are strongly connected to the global network infrastructure. However, many rural areas live in a mass society with little connectivity. It will take some time for this to change, but when it does, expect big changes in different living standards. With inclusion and equation, people now drive to commute. Many of you probably could not think about leaving your phone at home before coming to college. This gives us a 24/7 society. However, many people in the world do not have quality access to the same level of connectivity. Are the rich getting richer? Google hierarchy is a term used for describing sources and information that is at the top of the list of search engine searches. This prevents new networks from growing and developing. As networks are becoming the nervous system of society, any breakdown could cause a serious crisis. What if the internet at the college stopped working right now? What if the stock market got hit with a software failure? With so much importance put on networks, ensuring these networks remain up and running is vital, which brings us to our conclusion.
How do we control the network society? In the United States, we have a libertarian model where free enterprise rules and regulation is limited. But are the citizens fully protected? In Europe, we see a mix of liberal and public interests, with the European tendency towards government intervention to promote and regulate the information society. Whilst this may sound good in theory, Europe lags behind the States in terms of network development and keeping up the rapid pace of the network society. In East Asia, we see a somewhat bizarre structure. East Asia, after the States, is the largest actor in the global market of information technology. particularly in hardware production. Yet we see two systems: an acceptance of global capitalism and strict regulation on public services and how information is received. So whilst the development of the network society is occurring, it is tightly controlled. The States could use the European model of intervention at times. Europe could borrow some of the USA's liberalism, whilst East Asia could move towards a more democratic model of providing information. Whichever model wins will in some way control the future of the network society. We hope that you have enjoyed our presentation today. Thank you.